Hey everyone, my name is Sara Harberson. I'm America's college counselor. It's great to see you all tonight. We want to make sure that we are working because we did have some issues getting started. So if you can give me some shout outs, some emojis, just to make sure that we are working well. It's great to see you all tonight. Good. All right, I think we are working. Awesome. So tonight is going to be a special edition Facebook Live, and it's going to be about early decision and early action. So I want you all to be asking those questions that are on your minds about early decision and early action. A number of those deadlines are approaching. There are a lot of deadlines around November 1st. Some of the colleges have made some announcements over the last couple of weeks and even the last couple of months that they are extending their deadlines a little bit more, especially because of all the COVID concerns and delays that students have been experiencing. So I'm hearing of a number of colleges extending their early decision or early action deadline to November 15th or November 16th, but there are a lot of colleges, honestly, that did not extend their deadlines, and they're staying with usually like a November 1st deadline. There were a handful of early action deadlines that have already passed, but there aren't many of those. So for example, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill has a very early deadline for their early action program. It is usually October 15th, and it was this fall as well. So why don't we get started with some of your questions? And again, we're going to try to focus tonight on early decision and early action, try to help those high school seniors who are about to submit sometimes their first application. So the first question that comes in, should you send in first quarter grades for early applications whether the college asks for it or not? Where and how do you send them? So I have a blog about this from, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, and we will post that in the comments section below the live feed. But generally speaking, if you have done extremely well at the beginning of senior year, let's say you've already gotten your first marking period or first quarter, maybe even first trimester grades, it is possible to have those grades sent to some of your early schools, maybe your early decision school, maybe even some of your early action schools. Generally speaking, a large state or public university like the University of Michigan, for example, they are not going to be accepting first quarter or first marking period grades for those students applying early action. They just don't have the resources to be able to process all of that. But what you will find is that with most private colleges and private universities, they're more than happy to accept those first quarter, first marking period grades. The best individuals to send those first marking period grades would be the college counselor of record. And you can ask your college counselor to see if they're willing to do it. Most of the time, those grades are going to come out sometimes after those early decision or early action deadlines. It's still okay. A lot of times, students are going to be updating things if new information becomes available. So those first quarter, first marking period grades can definitely enhance an early decision or an early action application. Just make sure those grades are really, really strong. I say generally speaking, if all of your grades are within the A range, that's probably a good sign to send them along. Next question. Do you believe there is an advantage to apply early action if you are within the middle 50% GPA range and test score ranges? So early action is different than early decision, right? Early decision is a binding program. If you get admitted, you are planning to enroll at that institution. And because of that, colleges and universities that have early decision are going to be usually quite generous in the early decision round. With early action, though, there is no binding commitment. So it's not necessarily going to be a clear indication that the student is going to enroll. So oftentimes, if you're looking at a college that has early action, their acceptance rate in early action is usually pretty close to what it would be in regular decision. Often I see, if I'm able to get my hands on those acceptance rates, I usually see that the early action acceptance rate is, I would say, a little bit higher usually than the regular decision acceptance rate. So I would say your odds, generally speaking, can be a little bit better. But this year, I'm anticipating that a college or university that's offering a non-restrictive early action program, and most of them are, University University of Michigan, University of Virginia, UNC Chapel Hill. Tulane has an early action program. Northeastern has an early action program. University of Chicago has an early action program. I'm anticipating that those colleges with non-restrictive early action programs are probably going to see a bigger applicant pool in their early action round. And so does that mean it's going to be tougher? No, not necessarily, because sometimes they will really respond to the quantity and quality that they see. If you are right in the middle of that middle 50% range, I always say, why not submit your application to for early action? Because it takes another application off your plate. You're able to send that in early. And most of the time, a college is going to give out 3 different results, either acceptance under early action, a deny under early action, or a lot of times they will defer students that they don't admit and thus would be reevaluating their applications in regular decision. But I feel like if you can send in as many early action applications as you can and some rolling admissions programs as well, it's going to give you some more options and get some acceptances, ideally a little bit sooner than springtime. Next question, early decision. How much of a reach is worthwhile? My senior is at the lower end of the middle 50% range from our high school, which is a top 20 public school in Massachusetts. So for early decision, you usually do see a higher acceptance rate compared to the college's regular decision rate. But I often say you still want to be competitive for that college. You don't want to apply early decision because you hear it has a higher acceptance rate, but you are not competitive in that applicant pool. So being in that middle 50% range, even if you are on the lower end, you still are going to have a much better chance of getting admitted in early decision than you would in regular decision. You just want to be smart about it. If it is such a reach, then you're throwing away that early decision opportunity to a school that you probably don't have a chance at. But here's the thing, even though I'm saying that I'm anticipating large early action applicant pools, I'm anticipating significantly smaller early decision applicant pools. And that might really work in a student's favor, especially this year. The reason why I'm anticipating a smaller early decision applicant pool at any college that offers early decision is that there are not a lot of students who are able to visit all the colleges that are on their list. And with early decision, you are committing to that one school. So you have to be pretty sure not only about that college being your top choice, but that you've seen enough other colleges to make sure that that one school is your top choice. And so these college visits, a lot of them didn't happen, and students just aren't ready to commit to one school. It can be really, really scary to commit to a college in early decision and be bound to attend that institution if you get admitted without ever stepping foot on that campus. The other thing is, I think there are a lot of families that are saying, listen, we've got to weigh all of our options, our need-based financial aid offers and merit scholarships as well. And so I think those early decision applicant pools are going to be smaller this year. We are already hearing of, as I said at the beginning, a number of colleges, especially the early decision programs or colleges with early decision programs, announcing that they are extending their deadlines for early decision. Sure, this is really helpful for students who especially maybe started school late or are having some, virtual learning issues, or the college counselors are overloaded with a lot of responsibilities that things could come late. So yes, extending those deadlines can absolutely help students, but ultimately the colleges are doing it for a very self-serving reason. They can already see based on previous years that their early decision applications are tracking behind. So a lot of times when they extend the deadline, it's because they're hoping that that pool increases in terms of the number of applications. Next question. Does early decision help at a highly selected college like Brown, especially for a person of color and first generation? So as I mentioned, for every college that offers early decision, you're going to see a higher acceptance rate in early decision than it is in regular decision. Sometimes it's twice as high than it is in regular decision. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 times as high as the acceptance rate in regular decision, even at a highly selected college, applying early decision can really give you a boost, an advantage in the admissions process. Another thing to keep in mind is that traditionally speaking, because early decision is binding, a lot of times it has been a fairly homogeneous applicant pool, meaning that there are a lot of majority students applying to those highly selective colleges that offer early decision. So a student of color, a first generation college student, if you're able to commit early to a college like Brown in their early decision program, there aren't going to be a lot of students with your background in that applicant pool, and so it can increase your chance of acceptance as well. Next question. My son has 0 SAT scores, only PSAT and a solid essay and alumni letter of recommendation. He is submitting early action. How important is the activities section, and will it impact the decision, especially since many activities have been canceled? So I feel for you. I think there are so many other students in this country who haven't had an opportunity to take SAT scores, and they're wondering how the rest of their application is going to be evaluated. I can tell you that admissions officers are well aware of all the testing cancellations, and they're well aware that a lot of schools are not operating on their normal schedule, and they're not offering the same opportunities that they have in the past. And so they're going to be aware of that as they start evaluating applications, especially that activities section. But also, what I've been telling students is, if you're hopeful that you're going to be able to play basketball in the winter season at your high school, you don't know for sure, you should check off the box for 12th grade. And if it doesn't happen, it's not your fault. You don't have to notify every single college. But if you're hoping to play a sport, hoping to participate in an activity, and you're not sure if it's actually going to happen, you should be checking off the 12th grade box on the activity. But also, I think if you don't, you can simply say as part of your description, or maybe using the organization line in Common App very creatively, that 12th grade, there are no clubs available at your high school. So that way the admissions officer is aware of it. The other thing that you can do, you don't have to do, but with the COVID section on Common App, you could make it clear, make a statement that there are no sports, no clubs, no organizations that are going on within your high school community for this year, just so that they're aware of it and they're not looking for it. So for students that aren't submitting test scores and the college has been test optional, it means that your high school transcript is going to carry more weight, and it already carries the most. It's going to carry even more weight in the admissions process. Your activities will be factored in even more, your essays, your letters of recommendation, basically everything is going to be factored in a little bit more. And so if you have done well at the beginning of senior year, it's a good thing possibly to maybe get those grades sent to that early decision or early action school, because that can bolster your early decision or early action application. Next question. Hi, Sarah. You mentioned you can get deferred for an early application submission. Does this mean you can receive a deferral through early decision and or early action? Yes, that's right. So for almost every college in the country that offers early decision or early action, there are going to be those 3 possible outcomes. You could be admitted, you could be denied, or you could be deferred to regular decision. Again, this can happen for early decision and early action. There are a couple of exceptions, believe it or not. Vanderbilt, at least in the past, they have 2 rounds of early decision, and they don't defer anyone to regular decision who applies early decision 1 or early decision 2. So if you're applying to Vanderbilt early decision 1 or early decision 2, the only 2 outcomes that could happen would be to be admitted under one of those early decision plans, which means you would be enrolling at Vanderbilt, or you could be denied and you cannot reapply to Vanderbilt until the following year. The other exception that I know of is Georgetown. Georgetown has an early action program. They do not deny anyone from their early action pool. So if you apply early action to Georgetown, you're either going to be admitted or you're going to be deferred to regular decision. What does it mean to be deferred? It means that the admissions committee is going to take another look at your application in regular decision and compare your application to the other students or the other applications in regular decision. So if you've been deferred, I have a lot of blogs related to being deferred and what steps you can take to increase your chances of getting admitted in the regular decision round. If you've been deferred from an early decision program to regular decision, the binding agreement is no longer existent. You are not bound to attend that institution if you get admitted in the regular decision round. If you've been deferred, you have every right to decide to go to that institution that initially deferred you if they admit you, or another institution. All right, next question. What if my son applies early decision, doesn't get accepted under the first choice major, but does get accepted under his second choice? Is he still bound to the contract? Usually the college will make it pretty clear. If a college allows a student to list a second choice major or program, usually there's an additional question. So if you don't get into your first choice in early decision, would you like to be considered for your second choice under the binding agreement? So usually there's going to be a question right on the college's application or the college's supplement. I know that when I worked at the University of Pennsylvania in the undergraduate admissions office, there are a number of joint degree programs that students can apply to in early decision or regular decision, and still on Penn's supplement, they will say specifically, if you don't get into the Huntsman program in International Studies and Business, would you like to be considered for your single degree choice in early decision? And not every student will say yes to that. If they do, they could be considered and admitted in early decision to their single degree choice. Some students say, I'd rather be deferred or possibly not get admitted if they don't get into the Huntsman program in early decision. So it's going to vary from college to college. Check out the college's supplement or their individualized application. Next question. Should students that don't feel comfortable applying early decision to a highly selective school, given the reasons you explained, is there an advantage to submitting your application early for regular decision, assuming there is no early action? So I wrote my blog about this last week, so we'll post that into the comment section as well. And I kind of, weighed the options that you have. So if your application is all done and you want to send it in for regular decision, you absolutely can. Typically though, the admissions officers aren't going to start reading regular decision applications until they get through early decision or early action, depending on what they have. The advantages of submitting an application well before the regular decision deadline takes the pressure off. It gets that application, out of the student's hands so that they can focus on their classes for senior year and focus on having, some fun senior year as well. Some things to keep in mind though is that, let's say you get into an early decision school and you've already submitted your regular decision applications. You would have to withdraw those regular decision applications immediately and you would lose the application fees. So those application fees absolutely could add up, so keep that in mind. The other thing is anything can change. Your classes could change. You could have a change in address. You could have a change in your activities. So you have to make sure that you're updating the college on that changes, because if you submit your application the end of October for a regular decision deadline that's January 1st, a lot can happen between now and then. Next question. If you apply early decision and do not receive financial aid as estimated, how binding is the acceptance? This is the one time when the student would be released from the binding agreement, is if their financial aid did not work out with the institution. However, a lot of back and forth negotiations need to occur before a college is going to release a student from the binding agreement because of financial aid reasons. So what I often tell families is, if you get admitted to your early decision college and you've applied for need-based financial aid, you want to wait till you get that financial aid award in your hand so you can take a look at it. You don't just want to get admitted early decision and then withdraw all of your other applications, because You want to make sure that the financial aid is going to work. And in some cases, the colleges sometimes will send the financial aid award a day or two, or sometimes even later than that, after they send their acceptance letter. So you want to look at that financial aid award. If it's not what you were hoping for, you would be contacting the admissions office, the financial aid office, sometimes both, because there's usually a process of reevaluation so that the family can submit additional information and possibly see if they qualify for more need-based financial aid. So that would need to happen probably from mid-December to right before Christmas, so to speak, because usually admissions and financial aid offices will usually shut down for the week between Christmas and New Year's. You want to get that resolved because most of those regular decision deadlines are January 1st. So if you still have more applications to submit for those regular decision schools, you really need to know your status. So I would say wait until that award comes out. You can usually appeal it or go through a reevaluation process. And if it's still not where you need it to be, the college will release the student from the binding agreement. That is the only time when that would occur. All right, next question. Will having done 6 or 7 college classes help in early decision when SATs have been canceled? So college classes are usually advanced classes, and so if you've exhausted your curriculum at your high school and you've been taking college classes, maybe at the local community college or local university or online college classes, you've done well in those classes, that can absolutely strengthen an application. But also keep in mind that you're only expected to take advantage of what's being offered at your high school. So if AP classes and honors classes are offered at your high school and you've taken every possible challenging course that you can, and now you've taken some college classes, absolutely, it can strengthen your application, especially if you've taken a class that's related to the major that you want to pursue. So make sure that if those college classes aren't showing up in your high school transcript, make sure you send an official transcript from that community college, that local university, or that online university. Make sure that official transcript gets sent from that institution to all the colleges that are on your list. All right, next question. If deferred for early action, can you then reapply for early decision? So if I'm understanding the question, if a student applies early action, let's say it's Northeastern, and they get deferred, can they apply early decision to Northeastern? Typically not, because the early decision deadlines and the notifications are usually going to be before an institution that offers both early decision and early action is usually going to happen before the early action outcomes. So that's typically not possible. However, it is possible to, let's say, you apply early decision to Vanderbilt, and you find out that you did not get admitted around mid-December. You could potentially apply early decision 2 to another institution if it's offered. There aren't a lot of colleges out there that offer early decision 2, but there are a number of them, and some of them are highly selective, some of them are very selective, some of them are selective in nature, so definitely check that out. Next question. Do you suspect that early decision applicant pools will be smaller than in previous years? Absolutely, Andrew. I really do believe that. And the best, I saw this coming many months ago because admissions offices have been closed, families have not been able to travel, but the best way to know if that's really happening is to look at colleges who are going to begin to extend their deadlines. And some of them have done it already because they can track where they were on every single day compared this year compared to previous years. But I suspect we're going to start to hear more colleges extending their deadlines, especially those early decision schools. I can almost guarantee that. All right. Please tell us a bit about restrictive early action and any useful strategies for those colleges that have it. Restrictive early action can be really confusing, and there aren't many colleges that have it. So the more popular restrictive early action programs are going to be Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. Those are the big 3. Sometimes it's called single choice early action, sometimes it's called restrictive early action. The deadlines are around November 1st, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after, but right around November 1st. And those restrictive early action programs, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, they're going to notify students about their decisions right around the same time that the early decision programs are. So probably by mid-December, you would be hearing back. If you were to look at the acceptance rate for restrictive early action compared to the regular decision acceptance rate at these schools, it's a little bit higher than it is in regular decision, but you want to keep in mind that they often will be bringing in a lot of the recruited athletes through restrictive early action, and there could be a lot of legacy students applying in restrictive early action, which could elevate the acceptance rate in that earlier round. So you want to keep that in mind. In my opinion, though, applying to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, it's going to be tough whether you go restrictive early action or regular decision, but the acceptance rate is always going to be a little bit higher in restrictive early action than it is in regular decision, but you're not going to see the benefits that you would by applying to an early decision program, even an early decision program at a highly selective college. All right, next question. I'm just going to lean over and grab my water while I take a look. If we are still awaiting ACT, SAT scores, should we wait to apply to colleges until we have those scores? We're hopeful that those scores would help our son's chances at being accepted to some of the more selective institutions. This is it's a great question. I've been getting this question a lot with my Application Nation members. You have to really consider a lot of things here, because there are a lot of colleges that are allowing students to apply test optional, and if they get back October, November, sometimes even December scores, they're allowing those students to send in those scores late in the process, and they will be evaluated. Not every college is allowing students to do this, but there are a number of them that are doing that. If you have no scores, but you have just taken a test and you feel really great about it, or you are scheduled to take an upcoming test and it looks like it's going to happen, and you've been doing well on practice tests, you might want to consider regular decision, because you will have first semester grades and you might have those ACT or SAT scores to be considered. I think that's especially important if it's a student who is clearly a much stronger test taker than they are as a student in their academic core classes. And that could really help a student in regular decision, especially not only for acceptance, but possibly even for merit scholarships. So I would just put that out there, that if you are a really strong test taker and you know it based on practice tests, and maybe your grades aren't as strong, it might be worth waiting for regular decision, because you could really prove yourself in those first semester classes and prove yourself with that SAT or ACT score. Really good questions tonight. If an institution offers both early decision and early action, do they save the merit scholarships for early action, or do they give it to early decision applicants? Generally speaking, merit scholarships are used for one simple reason, and that is to get a student to enroll at that institution. If a student applies early decision and they are admitted, they are bound to attend regardless of whether or not they get a merit scholarship from that institution. So historically, those institutions that offer early decision and offer merit scholarships typically do not give out merit scholarships to those students who got admitted in early decision, or if they do it in a very limited way. And they will usually reserve that merit scholarship money for students applying regular decision or early action and regular decision, depending on what they have. All right, some more questions coming in. Do you expect the SAT ranges to drop for selective schools, considering students have not had the choice to take the test more than once? I think that's a strong possibility. So as we think about the class of 2022, The juniors, and looking at those middle 50% range of students who got accepted to the institutions this year, we're probably going to see that they're slightly lower than they have in the past. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that because most institutions have gone test optional, I think students can be very selective about which scores they submit. So even though not everybody has had a chance to take them a second or a third time, I think the students who are going to be submitting their scores are usually feeling pretty good about them. So it's going to be a close call, but I would guess that the middle 50% range, or the average SAT and ACT scores, are going to be lower this year than they have in the past. Next question, how are the early decision acceptance percentages impacted by sports, band, drama, students who are getting recruited? Great question. So the reality is that as much as I value sports and the performing arts, dance, drama, oftentimes the only students who are getting recruited, where it's really going to make a significant difference, are going to be those recruited athletes. And so a lot of times the collegiate coaches, if they work for an institution that has early decision, will absolutely be trying to encourage all of their recruited athletes to apply early decision. That way, the college knows that they are a guarantee, and the coach, frankly, knows that they're a guarantee. So when you see those early decision acceptance rates, they are higher for a number of reasons. They are higher for those recruited athletes who oftentimes are coming through early decision. But in general, early decision is going to not only benefit a student because it's going to give them a better shot of admission, but it is a huge benefit to that college or university. So they're going to try to fill as much of their freshman class through early decision as they possibly can. And I think that is going to be the case, especially this year, because there's going to be too much pressure in regular decision. There are going to be colleges competing for so many students who get admitted. And so early decision is really a guarantee. I was looking at one of the charts that I have and helping out an Application Nation family this week. They were asking about New York University, one of the most selective universities in the country. They offer early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision. They filled last year 67% of their incoming freshman class through early decision 1 and early decision 2. That meant they had less than half of their class to fill through regular decision, even though their applicant pool in regular decision is significantly larger than it is in early decision 1 and early decision 2. So you're going to find that colleges that offer early decision, especially this year, they're going to be trying to maximize as many of those early decision applicants as they possibly can, meaning acceptance rates might be even higher this year in early decision than ever before. All right, I'm going to take another 2 more questions we have time for. I still have a 7-year-old, I think, who was awake in the other room or maybe asleep on the couch. So I'm just going to take a few more and then wrap it up. Why is merit scholarship not expected for early decision, but financial aid is? My understanding that is that if you need to expect either, you shouldn't apply binding early decision. You know, there are a lot of experts that say, hey, listen, if you are that concerned about financial aid or comparing merit scholarships, early decision is not the way to go. That's what most experts will tell you. So if you need to weigh your options, applying early decision is quite limiting, because if the student gets admitted, doesn't matter if you get admitted to a rolling admissions program who offers you a full ride tuition scholarship. If you get admitted early decision to another institution, that's where you're going. So you really want to take into account what your circumstances are. And sometimes for families that need to weigh all their options, early decision is not the way to go. All right, any more questions? Maybe one more. Can you apply early decision for one college and restrictive early action to another at the same time? No, you may not. That's really tricky. You have to really read the fine print. So for example, you can't apply restrictive early action to Harvard and early decision to Northwestern. It's just impossible. For most restrictive early action institutions, the only other early programs that you could apply to would be those rolling admissions programs or those public state institutions that maybe have early action, or an institution overseas. If you're applying restrictive early action, you can't apply early decision anywhere or early action to a private college or university? All right, one more question. I'm getting the sign. One more. Do you think early decision acceptance rates at elite colleges will rise this year? I absolutely do. But I'll tell you, it's really hard to get that data on those early decision acceptance rates. I've got some data, but most families do not have that information readily available. And so they wouldn't know that necessarily. When you're looking at an acceptance rate on a college's website, or maybe or figuring out their acceptance rate through the common data set, it's going to just be the overall acceptance rate between their early round and their regular round if they have both. It's not going to break it down for you, but please know that early decision, it's probably going to be smaller applicant pools. It's probably going to be a higher acceptance rate in early decision, and regular decision is going to be a wild ride. So I'll be here every step of the way. As always, I'll be offering a Facebook Live every single month throughout the admissions process for all of you. And also keep in mind, almost every single Friday, I offer an Instagram Live, so you can ask your questions there as well. Hope to see you on Instagram Live on Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, everyone, have a great night. Good luck with submitting those early applications. Take care. Bye-bye.